Hi, everybody, and welcome. I see people joining. So excited to have you here. We'll give it just a couple minutes so that everybody has a chance to enter the Zoom meeting. Meanwhile, before we get started, I'll just wish you all a happy day. What is it? I think it's Wednesday, but it's been such a blur with all the COVID stuff. Yeah. It is Wednesday. So lovely to have you all here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for taking an hour to be here with me today and our team. It's wonderful. I see lots of folks joining in. Have a lot of information to share with you all today, and so happy you could all join. Just give it a few more minutes as everybody has a chance to enter Zoom. All right. Wonderful. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sophie Alcorn, and I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law. And it's a real big pleasure to be spending this time here with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. To all of our attendees, we'll be sending some follow-up materials to you by email at the end of this Zoom presentation. So you'll have materials to refer back to. And also, we'll be reserving some time at the end for questions and answers. But I love for these meetings to be interactive. So please, I will be monitoring the Q&A panel. We have a poll for you. So if you have a question midstream, don't hesitate to add it. And I will be happy to answer whatever I can as we go along. And then we'll also have some moments for additional Q&A and discussion at the end. So with that, I will share my screen and we will get started. So thank you so much for being here today. So we're talking about hiring top global and international talent in the United States during COVID and Trump, and there's so much to talk about here today. But before we dive in and before I share a little bit about myself and the Alcorn story, we have some questions for you. So Edith, who's supporting me, is going to be sending you all an immigration survey. So you should see that box pop up in front of you in case you are using Zoom through your login. If you're on the phone, I will just describe it to you. We're asking here, how important is it to your team to have access to top global talent so that they can work with you and be in place quickly and with low risk? And the second question is about how confident is your team about immigration security and predictability? So if you're in HR, feel free to answer about your company. If you are an employee, feel free to just share whatever makes sense depending on your different perspectives. And then the third question is, how important would it be for your team to have access to easier immigration options? And I'll definitely be touching on all of these points today during our discussion. We'll talk about the easiest ways to get people here in the short term, how to increase confidence in your teams so that immigration is done more rapidly and with better results, so that the people who need to be focusing on production can have the peace of mind to be able to confidently do so. And we'll also be talking about some interesting new immigration alternative options. So thank you so much to those of you who have voted, you're still welcome for a few more moments to add your votes if you have not already done so. And what I'm seeing here is that it's all of you said it was somewhat important or very important to have top global talent in place quickly and with low risk. And most of you, 60%, said that you are not confident about immigration security and predictability. And regarding the importance, how important would it be for your team to have easier immigration options? All of you said it was important, and 80% of you said it was very important. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer these questions. And great. Okay, so that sets the stage. So this is important. This is urgent. Thank you, Stephen Covey, for helping us organize things in that matrix. So with that, okay, let's dive in. So I just want to brag for a moment about some of our recent successes with our team in Alcorn Immigration Law. We've been winning H-1Bs over 95% of the time over the last several years, hundreds of them during the Trump administration. Under Obama, the national approval rating was 93 or 94%, but it's declined to, I think, 69% was the latest number I saw for the national average of how many H-1Bs get approved every year under the Trump administration. So we're really proud that we're winning, almost every single one. We do get some RFEs, requests for evidence, but the national average popped up to about 30%, I think, and we're only getting them about 10% of the time. And our extraordinary ability and national interest waiver cases, so O1As, EB1A, and EB2 national interest waiver, we're winning about 99% of these across hundreds. So we're really proud of this, and I would love to tell you how and how you can achieve these same results for your team, increasing predictability and everybody's peace of mind. So our mission at Alcorn Immigration Law is to overcome borders, expand opportunity, and connect the world. And we do this by practicing compassionate, cutting edge, and rigorous immigration law in service of the betterment of humanity. We're very proud of our success rates. We've supported hundreds of companies and thousands of individuals over the last 5 years since I founded Alcorn out of my kitchen in Mountain View when I was a stay-at-home mom to a preschooler and a toddler. And last year we won the award for one of the fastest growing certified women-owned businesses in the Pacific region of the United States. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm a board certified immigration law specialist by the State Bar of California with a focus on immigration and nationality law. I'm a second generation immigration attorney. My dad started practicing immigration law in the early 1980s in Southern California, where he had a firm, and he was also a certified specialist. And I am currently a TechCrunch author, a contributor. I have a weekly immigration advice column that you can check out. It's called Dear Sophie. It runs on TechCrunch and once a month TechCrunch as well. And we also have a podcast, Immigration Law for Tech Startups. And we've been focusing a lot on building that up over 2020. And so I think we're at I just recorded episode 36 this morning. So that is a wealth of knowledge for you to take a look at. 36 half-hour episodes, so 18 hours of content. It's all free. You can get it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. And it's basically about every bit of immigration minutia relevant to Silicon Valley. So visas, green cards, recruiters, self-petitions, anything that our clients need is on there. And so we've almost covered all the basics. It's a lot. And this fall, we're excited to also have some fun interviews that we're going to include in the podcast lineup like Tim Draper, amazing venture capitalist, will be on the podcast. So exciting things are coming. And I could not do this were it not for having an amazing team. It's so inspiring. I'm so grateful to work with so many amazing individuals. But our team is really wonderful, truly dedicated, and our success rates are because I have the opportunity to work with such amazing people and share their talents with all of you guys and the world. So we're all, yeah, my mom's from Germany, so I'm the child of an immigrant. Many of my colleagues are married to immigrants or immigrants themselves. So for us, it's personal. You know, we're not like a volume-based churn it out factory. And because we can add that personal touch and compassion, I am confident that this, you know, it's the opposite of nice guys finish last. If anything, the current immigration situation has shown me that nice guys get approved, and that's because, you know, we have great relationships with our clients, and so we can be very strategic and thorough about every case, giving it the highest chance of approval. And we've been proud to grow in the Silicon Valley ecosystem and network. We support lots of faculty, researchers, graduates, students, founders from top universities, amazing institutions, portfolio companies of fantastic venture capital funds. So for those of you on the phone, you can't see the slide. You know, we often work with Stanford, Harvard, and MIT alumni. Our companies are in the portfolios of SoftBank and Sequoia and Y Combinator, and we've been featured in several newspapers, including New York Times, Financial Times, and we were recently certified. For those of you who well, you're all here because you value diversity in your employees. So if you also value diversity in your vendors, we are a certified woman-owned business by WBENC. Very proud of that as well. All right, so let's get to it. There's a lot to talk about immigration options. And so what you all know, or else you wouldn't be here, and this is what this survey said, immigration law is complex. And that's okay. You know, we can do the heavy lifting for you, starting from that very first conversation about, oh my God, Sophie, we have this candidate. I don't know if we can hire them. They're from Canada, but they're outside of the country and they want an internship, but it needs to be paid. You know, what should we do? We field those types of questions all of the time for our portfolio of client companies at no charge, because as you probably all know, most of immigration law is practiced on a flat fee basis. So look, we want to help you find the best candidate and have an easy path for them to get here. So we're happy to answer any questions from recruiters or HR in advance of making an offer. But high level overview, when you're evaluating a candidate, or I know that we have some people from some VC funds registered for today's talk. If you're evaluating a founding team to conduct due diligence when you're deciding whether to make that investment in the startup, you're looking at each individual person and you want to assess, you know, do they have legal status to live and work in the United States, if that is something that is important to you. And with COVID, obviously, we're all doing things by Zoom. Here we are right now, and there's more remote work. But we do find that for many of our clients, having top talent in a radius of the Bay Area to attend team meetings is very important. For deep science, for deep tech, it's very important for people to be in physical lab space. And even if you're all working remotely, you want access to the best talent. And there are several companies that are doing layoffs right now. But if you could pick up somebody who needs a job, who's on an H-1B, and transfer them. Even if they're working from home, they need a visa transfer to your company. So it's very important to make this assessment for each person. Now, if you were born in the United States or your parents are American, you're probably a US citizen, and those people have work authorization. If somebody already has a green card, they can work for you, fine, no problem. But it's that intermediate zone. So people born in other countries who are either outside trying to get in, or in the US trying to switch companies or switch from being a student to being an employee. That is where this critical piece of getting a temporary short-term visa comes into place, or a green card for permanent residence. And having this is so important for people's peace of mind. It's really, really critical. And there's a lot of options. And so you can see on this slide that there are several immigration routes. This is a PDF infographic that we're going to share with all of you after today. And it's something I cooked up in my kitchen 5 years ago when I was just trying to figure out, like, what could I offer my new clients for my new law firm? And so we've gotten a lot of feedback from people in HR and founders that this chart really helped clarify for them what is going on and how the world of immigration law works. Because the way the laws were written in the 60s, there's several categories. So investor immigration, multinational companies, really top talent people, and then other workers or other exchange visitors. And in many of these categories, there's both a short-term option and a longer-term option. So a visa and a green card. And each of these has different legal requirements, different steps, and different benefits. So you'll get this handy-dandy chart to refer to. Feel free to share this PDF widely. So you'll get that at the end. And in the meantime, I'll walk you through some of the key parts about this, and also some of the big changes we've seen during COVID, and also some of the strategies we've developed and have been using to successfully support our portfolio of client companies to get their key talent in place and working in the United States. So since we're in COVID, things have changed, and this didn't used to make sense for people a year ago, but I threw it in as like a just fun fact, but it's actually becoming quite relevant now. Most companies choose to get people visas first for non-immigrant status, and then after they've been working for the company in the US for a few years, they may choose to sponsor them for a green card. Lots of large companies have policies surrounding that. And then once you've gotten the person a green card, they can go off and become a citizen or not, depending on what they want to do. That citizenship is an individual process. You always have to have a green card to get citizenship. So this other second layer on this chart shows that you don't need to have a visa to get a green card. And that is critical, as I hear more and more tech companies have remote workers in Chile, Argentina, Ukraine, all over the world. So just know that if immigration is important to a team member as a long-term benefit, but is not required for the immediate work that must be done, you could bypass the H-1B or the O-1 or the L-1. You could get them a green card. You could get somebody a green card even if they've never worked for your company before, and even if they're in another country. Right now, visa processing is limited for immigrant visas, which are green cards, at consulates around the world. But I do expect that to come back. This could be, at least a 2-year process for most people. So, you could consider a green card as a long-term incentive and employee benefit for team members who are in other countries. Now, oftentimes, many people in Silicon Valley, whether they're at tech companies or in venture capital, you're going, or maybe you personally are a founder or an employee, So many people who are immigrants who are looking to start companies or work for companies come to the United States on this student immigration journey. And it typically starts with the individual enrolling in a undergraduate or master's of engineering or MBA program, potentially a PhD program, and coming to the United States to be a full-time student at a university. Now, when they're a student, they could have a summer paid job that's typically CPT. Sometimes there's work permits for people with financial hardships, so that might be something that you come across in hiring. And after people graduate, there's another option that becomes available, which is OPT. So OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. It's a one-year work permit, and it is available to every F1 international graduate, regardless of their degree field, for 1 year after each educational level. So complete your bachelor's, get 1 year, go back to school, get a master's, get another year of regular OPT. Now, for certain students, and this is very common in the Bay Area, and for people joining tech companies, these individuals will often have STEM degrees, so science, technology, engineering, and math. My kids in their school, in their elementary school, now have a STEAM class, which adds in the arts, but US immigration law has not caught up with like the artistic side of things like UX and UI. So art is not currently included, but every school has a list of their degrees that they offer and whether they qualify for this STEM extension, which is a 2-year additional work permit that people can get. It's different from OPT. First of all, it's 2 years, not 1 year. And second, there's a few additional requirements on the company. So whereas an F1 OPT individual could be a volunteer at a nonprofit or a contractor or self-employed, if they want to become a STEM OPT holder, they need to be a W-2 employee at a company that is enrolled in and using the E-Verify I-9 document verification electronic system that the government has. And they also need an advisor who will make sure that they are moving ahead in their work. And this is usually pretty easy at a tech company that's already established. And we've been able to do it successfully for many founders of startups as well. Even if they're the CEO, we'll work with the school to figure out the individual requirements, but we can use a faculty. Often we've been able to use an outside faculty advisor, maybe who has equity in the company, maybe who doesn't. And so then the hope of all of these individuals has historically been to obtain an H-1B visa in the lottery. And then from there, to either have a company file a green card process for them. So that's PERM, followed by I-140, and then later adjustment of status. And many individuals are often seeking non-PERM options. So faster types of green cards, green cards with less backlogs, and some individuals then choose to get green cards by themselves without company sponsorship if they're qualified enough. And then citizenship comes down the road. So regarding green cards, there are many pathways to green cards. In addition to the business routes that we'll be discussing further, there are also family immigration options and the diversity visa lottery. And all of that can come into play in the Valley. So we're seeing more and more tech companies tell us that they are paying for their employees' marriage-based green card processes. It's like 1/3 of the price and 1/3 of the time as getting a business PERM employee green card. And so often if HR, talks to the individual, or the CEO does, and it's like, hey, oh, you're marrying a US citizen, you could get a work permit in 6 months and a green card in a year. And like, yeah, it's a good faith marriage, like we always see at the holiday parties. A lot of companies are generously choosing to support their employees that way by being the payor of the family spousal green card process, which is an I-130 and adjustment of status. And then we're also, I just went to a diversity visa lottery interview this week at USCIS, which was involving a lot of hand sanitizer and plexiglass, but it was great. And there's 2 lotteries in immigration law. There's the H-1B lottery, which is separate, and then there's this green card lottery. So the H-1B lottery is once a year for people from all over the world. Everybody has an equal chance based on their country of birth. And it leads to an H-1B, a non-immigrant status. The diversity visa lottery is the green card version. It's once a year. There are different categories based on what country somebody was born in. And there's a time limit. You basically have like 15 months to go through the whole green card process, or else you lose it. So there's often this mad rush in August and September to try to get all of those cases approved before the opportunity expires at the end of the current government fiscal year on September 30th. So to dive down a little deeper into the extraordinary ability and other types of green card alternatives, there are several categories. Immigration is a lot of alphabet soup, but some of it makes sense. It's just the way the laws, the sections were written in the law. So if you pull out the book of the law, which is like 300 pages, the Immigration and Nationality Act, passed by Congress and signed into law in the 60s, you'll just see, section H, subsection 1, subsection B, that's the one for specialty occupations. On the green card side here, EB means employment-based, and the numbers come from the preferences. So the employment-based first preference category, subsection A, is America wants to give permanent residence to people who are considered of extraordinary ability. And if you are not a top model married to the president and the first lady, or if you are not a Nobel Prize winner, it is still possible to get an EB1 for extraordinary ability. And this is the preferred option for many individuals born in India and China, especially who have advanced degrees, advanced research degrees, because the other categories, EB2 and EB3, have such long backlogs, because it's kind of just like a racist quota-based system that divides up people based on where they were born. So if you're from India and you have a PhD and you're in the normal EB2 category with a company and they did perm for you, could take 150 years to have your turn in line. So people are often looking for workarounds. So EB1A, don't need to be a Nobel laureate. Oh, and I see our first question coming in. Lovely, thank you. And we will be talking about H-1Bs in just a few minutes. So thank you for your question. Also, there are EB1B green cards for researchers. This could be a good option for a company that has at least 3 researchers on staff. Their candidate is Indian or Chinese, so they want them to be in the EB1 category to save time. But if the person is not yet qualified for an EB1A, this is a slightly easier standard to adopt. So this, we've used this for many individuals in semiconductor clients. And then if you're already a multinational company and you have managers at different offices around the world, if somebody's been managing a team in another country or a function, after a year of that employment, you could start the green card process for them. And then if somebody does not fit into those categories, but they have an advanced degree, they would go in the EB2 category. And if you want to skip the perm process, where you have to advertise the job to American workers to see if there's anybody else able, willing, and qualified to accept the job, before you offer it to your candidate, there is an exception called the national interest waiver. We've used this successfully for many people in tech, whether it's for COVID reasons, job creation for Americans, advancement of American manufacturing capabilities, satellites, coronavirus, I don't know if I said coronavirus research. There are many things that would be considered in the national interest that would qualify for this perm waiver in the EB2 category. And then just, the standard green card options that most companies focus on would be perm in the EB2 for advanced degree, or EB3 for people with a bachelor's degree category. Once I had a company that was even a blockchain crypto, they'd had an ICO, and they were even thinking about EB5 for the founders by giving them distributions of $500,000 each so that they could invest that into regional centers and get the EB5 green card as an investor. But the update to that was that last year, the investment minimum was raised. So if you're interested, it's now a minimum of $900,000 investment for a green card. There's also, I mentioned this, there's the marriage route. So this applies to people who are either currently in the United States or outside. If they're outside the US, if they're already married, they can get a green card abroad. If not, that's the 90-day fiance option. And then citizenship, several requirements. Basically, it takes 5 years. You have to be a good person, and you need to know more about US history than an average American would know, but it's totally manageable. It's sort of like a multiple choice test with 100 questions that people can memorize. Okay, so when you're going in to one of these processes, there's a lot to consider, and you just want to go in with your eyes open, and we try to be very transparent about this so there's no like hidden surprises for anybody, and you can all, prioritize your options and make the best decision for everybody going into the process, knowing, the chances and feeling confident about everything. But if you're starting a new immigration process, whether it's an H-1B or a green card, just know it's going to take a substantial amount of your time, and that may be a larger investment than the money that you also have to invest. There could be a request for evidence. There's always going to be government filing fees. The candidate may need educational evaluations, translations. If it's a small startup, we might have to take a close look at the prevailing wage on an H-1B to make sure the company can afford it and has the ability to pay. And as I mentioned, there's also the option of premium processing. And the podcast I recorded today, which is going to come out in about a week or two, is all about 7 ways to expedite your immigration case. So just know that premium processing is available for certain employment-based options. It might not always be wise, and sometimes companies need support getting other things sped up, like work permits for people or long pending green cards. So there's other immigration avenues to speed those up as well, and that's what that podcast will be about. So on the COVID side of things, some specific changes that have been happening since April include changes to green card processing, restrictions on work visas being obtainable in other countries, and there was this threat that was going to happen to students, which did not actually happen, thank goodness. So I will now dive in a little bit more about that. Okay, so the good news is that consulates are starting to reopen, not all of them, but we are seeing visa appointments being scheduled now for O visas, for certain people who meet exceptions to the immigrant visa, which is like the green card ban that was created. we are starting to see those appointments being scheduled between now and the end of 2020. And there are also exceptions that you can use. So the question was, what are the options for H-1Bs during this time of COVID? And thank you so much for that question. So if somebody is in the United States right now and they already have an H-1B, it is very relatively simple to transfer the H-1B to a new company. If somebody was laid off, they have a 60-day grace period, and during that time, as long as the new company files the I-129 petition by the end of that 60-day grace period, the foreign national future employee is allowed to start working for that new company once the H-1B petition package is received by USCIS. So that gives people a lot of flexibility. Now, there's some people, though, who you want to sponsor, but who are currently outside the United States, and that's where this consular piece comes into play. So if somebody already has a valid H-1B or L-1 visa, which is for multiple entries, they can come back into the United States, depending on what country they've been in lately. If they don't, that is where there are these new exceptions for who is in the national interest and who can get an appointment to still get a brand new H-1B visa or L-1 visa at a consulate abroad. And some of the examples of that are people working in COVID companies, finding research or vaccines or testing devices. That would be very important, clearly qualifying. If we can make a national interest job creation argument, that would be very important. Extreme financial loss to a company would count. If you just started the process for somebody, and I think after July 15th was the cutoff, that would be good because they care about the day the LCA was posted in the H-1B. Presumably, if it's been after July 15th, you've taken account of like the current availability of Americans to work in the company instead. Also, if you're paying somebody at least 15% more than the prevailing wage, that would count as well. And also, if your H-1B employee worked for you pre-COVID, but just got stuck outside on a trip to visit family and they were going to get their visa renewed and they couldn't, that is another exception. So we are actively supporting many clients right now to get all of those emergency visa appointments scheduled now that the consulates are reopening. So that's exciting. And there's also, travel is starting to become more possible again, which I think many of us appreciate. If you're a citizen or you have a green card, you can come into the US. Otherwise, for people who have been in certain areas, China, India, the Schengen area of Europe, Brazil, there is a travel restriction in place. So basically, if you've been in those geographic areas in the last 15 days, you can't come directly in. And so we had a really interesting situation with one of our extraordinary ability clients whose teenage child had been with the other parent in Europe for the summer, and we needed to get them reunited so that the teenager could return to California and start public school distance learning and keep up with classes and graduation requirements. And the teenager was flying alone to meet the extraordinary ability mom in Mexico, actually, where they were going to wait out the 15 days. Some people do it in Dubai. I've heard there's like Bali, Lux villas that are available too for quarantine. But we had this issue where the airlines wouldn't let this teenager onto the flight, and the mom, our client, called in a panic, and I ended up writing a letter and calling it urgent travel authorization for Mr. So-and-so, to whom it may concern, this individual has urgent demands and must travel immediately. All visas are lined up and the qualifications are met. So, this is like how we are strategic to support our clients in these crisis moments. So fortunately, the letter worked. The airline let the teenager on and he was able to have a Mexico vacation with his mom, and now they're back and school started. So it was a fun victory. I also mentioned that USCIS is reopening, interviews are restarting locally in San Jose and San Francisco. We attend all of the green card and citizenship interviews with our clients. So we always send an attorney. Even for our corporate clients, we want to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible. So that's just a part of our normal package. And a lot of the interviews are telephonic. You can go in person if there's like an urgent need, but we are requesting most of them to be telephonic right now for everybody's safety. But the good news is that USCIS is not furloughing 13,000 people, and B, has had the summer to get through a lot of backlog cases. So they're actually making rapid progress on many cases, and approvals are coming faster. Now, sometimes you might find a candidate who had a job offer from a company in their grace period, and then the company too reneged the offer, and they're just outside their grace period, and they've come to you and they're applying for a job, and you want to hire them and they can't leave because they can't get a flight, or they'll be stuck somewhere if they try to. So just know that there is this thing called a special situation, which is basically like, hey, there's something akin to a natural disaster, and USCIS will take that under consideration and has been supporting people with minor employment immigration violations to have those be cured and forgiven because it was due to the pandemic. And as I mentioned, there's also a possibility of expedite requests if there's no premium processing, if you really need to get somebody work authorized right away. Now, another thing to consider is sheltering in place and working from home. This doesn't matter for every immigration type, but it does matter really a lot for H-1Bs, and it can matter for Ls and TNs and E3s and H-1B1s, which is if you are moving to a partially remote workforce, your immigration law firm needs to know about that so that each individual employee has the proper immigration documentation in place. Some of these options, like the H-1B, have a prevailing wage that is geographically specific. And because of that, if your employee, for example, if their residence is in a different county than the principal place of work where they used to be going to the office all of the time, you might, if they're working from home, you might need to amend their LCA or their H-1B with USCIS, and B, if they live in a place with a higher cost of living than your work site, you might be required to actually pay them a higher wage. So just tread very cautiously in this, but also, going forward, it's kind of the best practice at this point to include everybody's home address as an alternative work site when you're getting that first H-1B, but then you have the additional compliance requirement of, okay, anytime your employee reports a change of address because they've moved their residence, be aware that you might have immigration obligations to change the address on their H-1B at that time. So another initiative that I've been involved in, which has the potential to be really beneficial for tech companies around the world is the nonprofit, the Community for Global Innovation. And this is a nonprofit that is supporting international students and graduates to connect with innovative companies that are focused on hiring top global talent and are open to giving everybody a chance who has a valid immigration pathway and not discriminating based on immigration. So we're getting a ton of interest from students, from universities, from companies. So if you're in an innovative company that would like to support international students and brilliant international graduates, and you would like them to know that they can apply to jobs in your company and that you'll actually take a look at their resumes, you can go onto our website. It's cfgi.world, and you can fill out the inquiry form to take the pledge that you are doing that with your hiring process. Actually, my co-founder for this nonprofit is a YC startup founder, and he wanted to pledge at Pranos. They're a new, they're going to put moving ads on car windows where the passengers can see out. But he wanted to pledge to commit to having 70% of his workforce be international. I'm not sure about the employment law side of that, so we decided to tone down the pledge a lot. But anyway, this is exciting, and if you want to get involved, you can reach out to us about that. Okay, so there's a couple things in conclusion that I wanted to also touch on, and in the meantime, if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A panel. I'm happy to answer them. But there are questions regarding visa restrictions and challenging the legality about those. And so all of this is complex and changing rapidly. And there's many types of litigation that are happening right now between the public and companies and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So some about these entry restrictions, some about public charge documentation in the green card process. So, there's a question specifically about a recent hearing. I don't know off the top of my head, but you can email me and I'll be happy to look into it for you if you have a specific question about that. I'm following Google News on immigration all the time, and sometimes, it's just too much. But another great news source, which I think has some materials open to the public, is AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. It's AILA.org. So that might be another resource for you to find information about that. And so, at the beginning, I asked the questions of how much is immigration a challenge, how important is it to you to figure it out, and how much would you like alternatives? And I will say this, that every candidate is different. Everybody, was born in a different place, has a different history. So it needs to be evaluated by an attorney on a case-by-case basis. And I would say this is not like fill out a form and an attorney does like a 3-minute cursory review of large batches. Like I'm often just having like a free 30-minute call to vet somebody who an offer has been made to find the fastest ways for them to get their status in order. So certainly, and this, this chart kind of goes through it, and you'll be getting that by email, but certainly if you need to hire internationally, you can be proactive about which countries you're recruiting in. For example, if you want to recruit in Australia, Chile, or Singapore, they all have special visa types, as well as Canada and Mexico. Sometimes in deep tech, it really just depends on where the universities are at that are really strong in your field, and you get a bunch of candidates out of there, and we figure out the best immigration strategy for them. If your company has international ownership, that may open up the E1 and E2 visas for people with the same citizenship of that company to be able to start working, even if they've never worked for your company before. So like for a Japanese owned company in the US, they could hire a brand new employee already in the US who's a Japanese citizen on an E2 maybe, even if that person would not qualify for an L1A and who has never worked for the company abroad before. And we're also doing a lot of evaluation and support to help companies and startup founders raise the qualifications for specific individuals for the O1 visa. So there's things your company can do to help people qualify as extraordinary. There are 8 categories in that visa type, and they include things like has the person authored articles? We could use, their name being on filed patents, whether this person judged any competitions in the field, whether it's startup pitch competitions or design competitions or any other type of competitions relevant to the field. If the company if the startup's doing a PR push, including this particular set of individuals who might want an O visa in the PR, so that there's articles in leading newspapers that talk about this person's accomplishments to the company, that can be very valuable, and that's something that we can plan in parallel with a marketing push for your company. So there's many things that can be done to take key great employees who are on OPT and STEM OPT to transform them from mediocre O1 candidates to strong O1 candidates. And this especially matters if somebody was not selected in the lottery. And then the other thing I'm really, really excited about is this new program that we're testing out. It's been successfully used for 10 H-1B candidates so far. But the result is you can get a brand new H-1B for somebody, whether they're inside the US or outside the US, even if they've never been through the lottery. You can get them an H-1B without them going through the lottery, and there's no October 1st start date. You can get them an H-1B any time of year. And I know this sounds like too good to be true, but it's real and it works. And we've won these types of cases. And feel free to email us if this is of interest to you. But basically, there's a loophole in the H-1B regulations that say that if somebody is affiliated with a US university, then they can get a cap exempt H-1B. And cap exempt, the cap refers to the lottery. So this means available any time of year and no lottery. And what you would have to be okay with your team member doing is that they would need to teach a class to diverse, underserved US student populations, potentially in a state university setting or maybe a community college, and they would be obligated to teach about 5 hours a week during the course of their H-1Bs. If that requirement becomes onerous, you could always put them in the lottery every year or try to get them an O1A so that they no longer have that teaching requirement. But basically, there's an opportunity to work with a nonprofit. So your employee could teach Americans who need access to STEM education or professional education. They do that 5 hours a week. They get their first H-1B in that role. And then you can immediately file a second concurrent H-1B for 35 or 40 hours a week, additionally, so that they can start working. And then the beauty of this is if they're already in H-1B status for the first nonprofit opportunity, then as soon as your company files a second concurrent H-1B, they are work authorized to start working at your company, even while USCIS is making that decision. So I'm super excited about this opportunity because I have so many calls every year from really stressed out people that basically say like, hey, we tried the lottery when this person was in their, final year of their PhD. We tried the H-1B lottery during regular OPT. We tried it twice during STEM OPT. They still didn't get selected. Are they gonna enroll in another master's degree program and pay all that tuition just to be able to get the option of curricular practical training? Well, now there's another option, which is this CAP exempt H-1B process. And so it's just such a lovely, and if you have more questions, feel free to put them in the question and answer panel. We have a few more minutes and I would be more than happy to answer them, any other questions that you have. But what an ironic, I'm just so appreciative that, I remember the Trump administration starting with the Muslim ban, and I recorded a video on Periscope where I was basically like crying reading the Muslim ban regulations, and this got like 20,000 viewers. And so looking back, I would have never expected that at the end of this 4 years, we would end stronger than ever with basically almost 100% approval ratings, thousands of happy clients, and also just this plethora of new immigration options regarding CAP exempt H-1Bs and the utility of getting O visas for many people who are far from Nobel Prize level, but we can still make a very strong legal argument. They're the top soil chemist of Italy who's needed on this research program in ag tech in Silicon Valley, right? We can be very, very creative with these options. And so when we start with compassion and relationships, get to know our clients, we can always put forth those individual strategies, which lead to a lot of peace of mind for team members and for HRs and CEOs. So that the work can be done by the highest qualified person. So I'll just point out that we're happy to support you. Hope you found this valuable. I understand how important and urgent this topic is to so many people, and please do feel free to follow us, Alcorn Immigration Law. We're on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, posting a lot of updates, and including from our blog, and then we also have the podcast Immigration Law for Tech Startups with a new episode every Wednesday. And so we'd love to support you. We'll be reaching out, providing additional materials that a lot of companies say they find helpful. Some TechCrunch articles that I've written that take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the practicalities of these options and how they work. And I do see, thank you. I got thank you, Parth, for your comment. Really appreciate it. And we do have a question. This is from Amit. Does somebody need to already be employed with a company for the CAP exempt option you mentioned, or can it be done from outside the United States? Great question, Amit. No, you do not already need to be employed, but it is an employment-based petition. So it will not work unless you have an offer from a US company that would like to hire you. And before we go down that road, if you're in another country, we also need to make sure that you can meet one of the exceptions to actually get an H-1B visa interview these days. So if you're in talks with a company, then you kind of need to have fleshed out like what is the offer, the job title, the job description, the salary, and then send it over. We can take a look about, you know, if and how we could get you a visa interview based on the national interest exceptions. And then from there, if there is a possibility of getting you that ultimate visa interview, your company can work with us to recommend you to this nonprofit. The nonprofit will evaluate whether you're qualified, whether you can be a teaching fellow, what your field would be, what type of classes would be appropriate for you to teach. And then the company would work both in parallel with the nonprofit for one H-1B to teach, and then with us in parallel for the H-1B for you to work there. And then ultimately we would get both of these petitions approved. And then once we have that in place, you would go for your visa interview in the other country. And that's how that would work. So if there's a company interested in hiring you right now, it's definitely worth starting that conversation. And, you know, we can also explore for any VCs in the room or people with small startups or founders. There's also ways to leverage the H-1B in early stage startups that we're happy to explore with you. So that's it, you guys. We are out of time. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for your participation. It's been so lovely having you all here with me today. We may be geographically far away, but together we're close. So we're here for you. Let us know if you need any support. We look forward to staying in touch, and thank you so much, and stay tuned. I'm sure we're gonna do more of these throughout the fall. And oh, thank you, Nestor, for your kind comment. I have never had my presentation be called utterly awesome. That is definitely a quote that I'm gonna write down and look at. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.